the sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. It's summer, the people are gay. They are gay. Well, the corns are ripe and the meadows are in bloom, and the birds make music all day, and they sing doom 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 doom, and they sing doom doom doom.
The young folks roll on the little cabin floor, all merry, all happy and bright. But by and by, hard times come a knocking at your door.
Oh, Kentucky home.
We say goodnight.
We say goodnight. Weep no more, my lady. Oh, weep no more today. Hey, hey. We will sing a song for my old Kentucky home. My old Kentucky home, far away.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that rendition of My Old Kentucky Home. I try to come up with a new group every 3 or 4 weeks. These guys were from Louisville, and they were on America's Got Talent maybe 6 years ago. They did very well. They didn't win, but they did very well. And seemed like, pretty often we have somebody from Kentucky that's on either Survivor or America's Got Talent, The Voice. We seem to have a lot of singing talent. We've got, we've got Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass music. We've got the Everly Brothers. We've got we just got a lot of people that Loretta Lynn. We've got just a lot of talented singers from Kentucky. So maybe one of you all are one of those. But anyway, these guys, I really enjoyed their rendition. I like a cappella music, and they did a great job. So what I want to do today is kind of catch up. I've missed the first couple of classes. I'm sorry for that, but I'm sure we're keeping up. I'm reading your homework, and you're doing a good job. Seems like everybody's pretty much getting it. And so I'm excited about that. I want to do 4 things in class today. First, I want to explain the course a little bit more. Then I want to go to the chapter that you studied this week, Worldview. After that, jump back to the first chapter and just mention it because I wasn't there to talk with you about it. And then finally, look ahead to how maybe we'll finish up the manual over the next 4 to 5 weeks. Okay. Well, first of all, and this is just some general things about the class. First of all, the name of this class is Kentucky is My Land, and that name is also the name of a famous poem by a guy named Jesse Stewart. It's a pretty long poem, but there's a line in it that goes like this. I didn't have any choice as to where I was born, but if I had had my choice, I would have chosen Kentucky. Well, that's true for me too. If I'd have had my choice, I would have chosen Kentucky. I was actually born in Tennessee. I lived there 3 months, and then I moved to West Kentucky when I was just 3 months old, and I see myself as a pretty bona fide Kentuckian. I actually had a grandfather who lived in Kentucky uh, earlier, before the Civil War, and then that family moved back down to Ray County, Tennessee. But I've got deep Kentucky roots, and I love Kentucky. I hope you'll memorize a little bit of this poem. We'll come back to the whole poem. Like I said, it's pretty long, but even more than memorizing the poem, I hope that you really deepen your love and appreciation for our great Commonwealth over these next few uh, classes that we have together. So, the course begins with an introduction to worldview. It talks about, first of all, history from a Christian perspective in chapter 1, and then this chapter that you've just looked at, and then it's after that, it gives you the different kinds of worldviews, but after we talk about worldview generally, then we go into the next 4 chapters, which will kind of explain where we in Kentucky got our worldview. So let's go ahead and just kind of jump back into the worldview chapter. And so it was it's not an easy chapter. It's probably the hardest chapter in this little manual. But what would I want you to remember about worldview? Well, first of all, and I think most importantly, is for you to understand that worldviews exist. People have ways of seeing the world. And people kind of group together and affect each other and begin to see the world a lot of times in the same way. And so there's 2 ways. There's several ways that you could divide it up, but one way you could divide it up would be between just 2 groups. One group would be people who believe in God. This could be Allah, it could be Vashti, it could be Zeus, but they do believe that there's that spiritual world. The other, though, that you could consider would be those who do not believe in a metaphysical world, anything beyond what you can see. And those people interpret the world very differently than those who see the world as something that God created, or at least that God is involved with. One of the ways I like to illustrate sort of having different perspectives is the old fable of the blind men and the elephant. I think this comes from India. I'm not sure, but let me see if I can pull it up here. I'm going to go small and see if I can move around. Yeah, there it is. Okay, let me read this to you. This is the fable of the 6 blind men and the elephant. It was 6 men of Indostan, to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, each that by had observation might satisfy his mind. The first approached the elephant, and happening to fall against his broad and sturdy side, at once began to bawl. God bless me, but the elephant is very like a wall. The second, feeling of the tusk, cried, Ho, what have we here, so very round and smooth and sharp? To me 'tis mighty clear, this wonder of an elephant is very like a spear. The third approached the animal, and happening to take the squirming trunk with his hands, thus boldly up and spake, I see, quoth he, the elephant is very like a, you guessed it, snake. The fourth reached out his eager hand, and felt about the knee. What most this wondrous beast is like is mighty plain, quoth he. 'Tis clear enough the elephant is very like a tree. The fifth, who chanced to touch the ear, said, E'en the blindest man can tell what this resembles most, deny the fact who can. This marvel of an elephant is very like a fan. The sixth, No sooner had begun about the beast to grope, than seizing on the swinging tail that fell within his scope, I see, quoth he, the elephant is very like a rope. And so these men of Indostan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and wrong, though each was partly in the right, and all were in the wrong. So this illustrates that people can have worldviews, they can interpret things from just the perspective that they have. And if you have the wrong perspective, then you interpret the situation very wrongly. Something like this. Now we know an elephant doesn't look like this because we have eyes to see, and we've seen pictures, and a lot of us have probably even seen an elephant. But these men were blind, and they were very limited in their information, and so they developed a view of the elephant that was wrong. And so that's a good example of people who have worldviews that are different. They interpret things differently. And so one of the ways that you can divide it is pretty simple. You can divide it between those who believe in God and those who only believe in what they can see, taste, touch, or smell. And then let me see if I can get myself back in the picture. Hey, good to see you guys. So what we would call those people who believe in God, we would call those theists. And those who don't believe in God, we would call them anti-theists. Theist and anti-theist. That's pretty simple. And of course, that does affect the way you believe about everything. Another way that you might want to divide it up would be in 3 different categories. And this is in your manual. You could see theists. You could see modernists, people with a modern worldview, or what we would call a nominal worldview, or a natural worldview. As some people would call it humanism. That might not be the best term to use. But then postmodernism. So if you use modernism for the middle one, then there's postmodernism. But the point of those 3, and I think everybody got it pretty clearly in the paper that you wrote, is that the modernists do not believe in anything beyond what they can see, taste, touch. They interpret the world scientifically without any spiritual implications. And the postmodernists, and everybody seemed to understand this pretty well, they do not believe that there's absolute truth, and that each person, as they gather facts and analyze it, their conclusions might be different, but they can both be true. Now, there's some riddles in which seemingly opposites can be true, not really, but we know that the basics of life all have a very clear interpretation in light of the fact that God created the world and God sustains the world. And so what I'd like you to remember is everybody has a worldview, because there's so many people there are different worldviews, and I'd like you to be able to divide worldviews up and see the implications. Which, by the way, are there implications? Does it matter what your worldview is? Well, one of the capstone books that you're going to read your senior year is Brothers Karamazov. I love that book. I read it every year, and I have read it every year for the 30 years. Mr. Hughes will teach your senior seminar, but I've gone through that book many, many times, and it just has such insight. But there's one particular character, Ivan. He's one of the brothers. He's been to the university and been educated in a more modern approach to life. And so he's written this poem, and it really plays a lot into the book. The book is really, I mean, it's everything. You could call it a worldview manual if you want to. It really talks about how changing fundamental ideas really change the way a culture interacts. But Yvonne has written this poem, and there's a line in it, and it's this: if there is no God, all things are permissible. If there is no God, all things are permissible. So what he's saying is, if you have a Christian worldview, some things are not permissible. But if you don't believe that there's a God, you can do what you want. There is no foundation for morality. There's no way one person can tell another person that they are right or wrong. And so what happens is this philosophy begins to take hold. And ultimately, because of this philosophy, Fyodor, Yvonne's father, there's three brothers, Fyodor's the father, he gets murdered. And it's basically almost a direct result of this philosophy. If there is no God, then you can just knock somebody off if it's to your benefit. And so that's just a fictional example, but it's a very, very real. I don't know if you've understood that things can be fictional, but yet be true. And it really speaks of a truth. So what people believe presuppositionally or fundamentally really does affect the way we live. We love because we understand love. We love sacrificially because we have been shaped and formed in an understanding of who God is and who we're created to be, what we understand humanity to be. And so it makes a difference. We aren't just the product of time and just motion. We are the exact image of God. We were created in His image, and so bottom line, worldview is important, and you'll find through all of our literature as you walk through it that almost every novel, every piece of literature, all poetry, it talks about the deeper questions of life, and they are understood. Some of our literature is not necessarily Christian. Most of it is theistic, but it's not all Christian. And it just shows you how people think. And so I hope it encourages you, understanding that it's a worldview, to make sure that you're very diligent, to make sure that your presuppositions, the things that you're believing are true, are truly true. If you'll let me say it that way. All right. Well, just for your information, it is 1:00 in the morning. I'm on vacation, and we're down in Florida, and I've had a little bit of trouble figuring out how to record this and get it to you. So if I'm starting to look sleepy, it's because I'm sleepy. All right? Okay, so we've talked about the course generally. I've given you things I want you to remember about worldview. And then let's pop back real quick, if you don't mind, to let's go to the manual and look real quickly at the let's see. I got to make this smaller. I'm learning how to use this. I really like doing it, but I haven't quite got it figured out. So this is your Kentucky is My Land manual, and here's the last the last page. So here's the 4 reasons that we listed, and it's not exhaustive, but here's the 4 reasons we listed. First of all, that four reasons for studying history. An accurate view of history can help you become men and women who serve God's purpose in your generation in cooperation with His Spirit as people after God's own heart. That's number one. All right, number two, the Christian who wants to participate in moving his state closer to the will of God must understand the times. Three, and everybody did well on your quiz, you got these, to understand how to advise governments and live without being led astray by current fads and ungodly pressures. And then finally, to understand personal abilities for affecting family, city, state, or nation. There's a typo there. I need to correct that. Anyway, so those are the four things to think about. And you probably could add, 10 or 15 other reasons to study history. But if you could just remember these, that I have a part to play, that that part is necessary for me to understand the times, to understand what's going on, and really give yourself to this Martell education, and pay attention so that you're not led astray. And like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you're able to stand when everybody else bows. You're willing to not eat certain things to let God demonstrate his ability. All right, so that was the first chapter, and I think everybody did pretty well there. So we're moving along. We've got this foundation now. We understand worldviews exist, and we understand that we're looking at history from a Christian worldview, a Christian perspective. So the next thing I want to do is just mention the next few chapters, or the rest of the book, and how they're laid out. And to do that, I want to show you the old front to the manual. All right, there's the little sort of the motto: training students born for such a time as this to understand the times, Daniel, our sons of Issachar, so they can know what to do. Sons of Issachar, be strong and do exploits, that's Daniel, and serve their generation by the will of God, that was Esther. So it's all right there in that little statement. I'll kind of leave that up there so you can write it down if you want to. Okay, but moving on, the rest of the manual is going to talk about how Kentucky is part of U.S. history. But U.S. history is part of what we call Western history. And Western history is part of what we would call world history. So the whole world has a history, and people to some degree have some likenesses. But the further down you get, the more different they are in the way they view the world. Now, when I started teaching worldview, the internet had not really proliferated like it has today. And people were not as aware of things going on in other places. So it's almost like the whole world is becoming almost shaped into the same image. But that's really not true. But in some surface ways it is. But who we are in Kentucky is very much the result of the original colonies. As people came over from Europe, they had a way of thinking. Now, if folks from Africa had come over and settled the United States, or if people from the Middle East had come over and settled the United States, we would have a very different perspective. Even if Spain, rather than being down in Florida and further down in Central America, had come into the U.S. or come into this land that became the United States, we would be different. And so the whole idea is that we are affected by the history of the people who established the culture that was passed on to us. All right. So the next chapter we're going to go to is the third chapter, and it is sort of putting Kentucky history in context. And so I'll just point this out, and then I'll let you go. Actually, I have another video for you to listen to. I hope you appreciate it. But it's a video that's just about Kentucky, some different places in Kentucky. And it seemed like a pretty good thing to contemplate. So, all right, well, here's the fourth thing I wanted to talk about, which is the chapter that's coming up this week. Look, it's a short chapter, so you should be able to get through it pretty quick. And I'll have some homework for you and prep you for a quiz. No quiz this week, but I'll have a quiz next week. All right. It's basically, this chapter talks about where we came from, where the people who originally founded Kentucky came from. And there's three primary routes, but of course, all the routes come from over in off at the original colonies. So we had people from North Carolina and Virginia that came through the Cumberland Gap. Then we have people from Pennsylvania and Maryland, places like that, who come down a river from Fort Pitt and then get on the Ohio River, and they populate all down in through here. And then this route, really, if I were going to do this over, I would just use these two primary routes, number 1 and number 3. But people did come from Virginia and what's now West Virginia, and they would come down the little rivers and through the mountains and sometimes hit the Big Sandy and float up into the Ohio River and then float on down. But sometimes they just press on through. So those are the three routes. But the point is, the other end of these arrows are in the original colonies. So the ideas that the people had as they were founding Kentucky were ideas that had been cultivated in the colonies, which of course, if we go back to our other chart, what the original colonies, the way they thought, came from over in England for the most part, in Wales, Great Britain. Those are the people who mostly settled the original colonies. And so there you have it. We'll spend the next 4 classes and we'll talk about U.S. history, we'll talk about world history, and we'll talk about Western civilization. And then that will give us a context then to jump into Kentucky history proper with our book. Okay, well, sorry to not be there, but hopefully this will kind of help you get through this next chapter, and then we'll reconvene, and and then pretty soon I think we're going to have a field trip to the Kentucky Historical Society. All right, let me just kind of recap what I want you to take away. All right, first of all, this is Kentucky is My Land. It's not just a history class. It's about loving Kentucky, her geography, her people, her ideas. Also, worldview. Worldview can be to people, there are different worldviews. Everybody has one, but there are different ones. But people fall into groupings. One way to group it, theist, non-theist. Another way to group it would be theism, modernism, and postmodernism. Does it matter? Yes, it does. Okay? We are going to study history from a Christian perspective, unabashedly, unashamedly. we believe that history is His story. God is writing a story, and we are characters in this story. And then finally, we're going to look and we're going to see the rest of the world, how we ended up having the worldview that we do, and where these ideas have come from through the ages. All right. Father, thank you for these young men and young women, and ask that you would bless them, and Lord, that you would give us all a greater love for our country, and more specifically for our state. In Jesus' name, amen.
Creamy gravy, which goes well with the state's famous fried chicken. Even though fried chicken and bourbon are among the state's most famous exports, Kentucky has much more to offer. There are scenic landscapes to see, caverns to explore, and bluegrass festivals to visit. Kentucky has a long and interesting history, beautiful landscapes, cute little towns, interesting cities, and a lot of southern charm. Churchill Downs is the most well-known of the state's 5 tracks. Kentucky, the state founded by frontiersman Daniel Boone and the birthplace of President Abraham Lincoln, has a wide variety of things to do. There are beautiful views to see, caves to explore, and bluegrass concerts to go to. We bring you the top 10 attractions in Kentucky that you should not miss. Number 10. Abraham Lincoln Birthplace National Historic Park. The Abraham Lincoln Birthplace National Historic Park is built on the site of the 16th president's father, Thomas Lincoln's Sinking Springs Farm. The memorial building, which includes the symbolic birth cabin, a copy of Abraham Lincoln's one-room cottage where he was born in 1809, was completed in 1911. The neoclassical memorial building was created by architect John Russell Pope and is made of Tennessee marble and pink granite from Connecticut. It has 56 steps to remember how old Lincoln was when he died, and other parts honor his time in office. Sinking Spring, a natural water source named for the way the water goes back into the soil below, is also on the property. Number 9. Daniel Boone National Forest. The Daniel Boone National Forest is in the eastern part of Kentucky. It covers more than 708,000 acres and is spread out over 21 counties. The most interesting thing about the park is its varied landscape, which includes the 65-foot high and 75-foot wide natural bridge and more than 3,400 kilometers of sandstone cliffs, gorges, and ravines carved by rivers and streams. It is only one of the numerous odd rock formations seen in the park, formed by the erosive forces of wind and water. The Sheltowee Trace route is the longest in the park, stretching 273 miles through Daniel Boone National Forest. The Barren Folk Accessible Heritage Route is the closest to Whitley City. It is a paved 0.75-mile trail that tells the story of Barren folk mining and coal, and the hundreds of people who lived in the remote mining community. Number 8. Newport Aquarium. The Newport Aquarium has a large network of glass tubes that let people see and learn about many different kinds of aquatic life. You go via the Amazon tunnel into the habitat of the giant arapaima as it swims in a river through the flooded Amazon forest floor. More tunnels look into how a coral reef, which is full of life like unicorn fish, honeycomb moray eels, and cow-nose rays, works from the inside. You can get up close and personal with these intriguing predators as they swim past the Surrounded by Sharks exhibit and the Dangerous and Deadly exhibit, which has well-known fish like the piranha and the Gila monster. There are other fish that are just as scary. Another famous spot is Gator Alley, which is home to alligators, a frog habitat with rare species, a stingray touch tank, and the famous penguin habitat are some of the other exhibits. Throughout the day, the aquarium puts on several displays and presentations. Number 7. The Kentucky Derby Museum. The The Kentucky Derby Museum is right next to the racetrack. It has many displays on 2 floors that tell the story of the Kentucky Derby and Churchill Downs since the first race in 1875. There are also displays at the museum about thoroughbred horses and the different stages of their lives and training. The Greatest Race is an 18-minute feature film that is shown in high definition on a 360-degree screen. Pieces from legendary trainers like Bill Shoemaker and D. Wayne Lucas, as well as other important historical items, are on display at the museum. The museum also offers Churchill Downs tours for an extra cost, giving guests a behind-the-scenes peek at the facility. Derby Cafe, the on-site restaurant, is a terrific place to get a snack and take in the ambience of Churchill Downs. Number 6. Ark Encounter. People have been searching for Noah's Ark for many years, so stop looking. A replica duplicate may be found in Kentucky. Based on Bible stories, this huge ark was built to exacting standards and sits in a field next to Interstate 75 in Williamstown, about halfway between Cincinnati and Lexington. The ark is 510 feet long, 85 feet wide, and 51 feet high, and excursions are available. Inside this magnificent wooden structure, you'll discover displays depicting life on the ark when it was at sea. The ark isn't the only reason to come here. On the same grounds, you'll also discover 17-story-high zip lines and a vast playground. Visit the Ararat Ridge Zoo to witness a broad variety of animals and even get up close and personal with a camel, kangaroo, goats, and even a tortoise. We aim to bring you the top 10 best places to visit in every state. If you like the video so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell to be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Number 5. Natural Bridge State Resort Park. Natural Bridge State Resort Park should be on your list of places to visit in Kentucky if you like the life outdoors. Natural Bridge is one of Kentucky's oldest state parks, with 19 miles, 30 kilometers of hiking trails, and a small lake for fishing and canoeing. In addition, the Red River Gorge has a beautiful landscape and a 66-foot, 20-meter natural bridge made of sandstone. A natural reserve covers around half of the park. Square dancers. During the summer, the park holds twice-weekly Appalachian square dances. Number 4. Lexington. Lexington, Kentucky's second-largest city, is the hub of the bluegrass area. It is also renowned as the world's horse capital. It has been a thoroughbred racing hub for over 200 years. The Bluegrass Stakes is regarded as a dress rehearsal for the Kentucky Derby. An early 19th century poet named the city Athens of the West. Lexington has a thriving cultural culture, featuring music and artistic events all year. In the 19th century, politician Henry Clay, Confederate President Jefferson Davis, and actor George Clooney all lived in Lexington. Number 3. Mammoth Cave National Park. Spelunkers are undoubtedly well aware that Mammoth Cave is the world's longest cave system. To present, 405 miles. 652 kilometers of tunnels have been explored. This amount grows each year as new discoveries are made. Hunters found the caves in 1797, and calcium nitrate was taken from them during the War of 1912. Several caverns are available to tourists, including electric-lit excursions. Hardier explorers may take a light tour that entails crawling through muddy corridors. Every year, around 2 million people visit the national park, with approximately 500,000 enjoying a cave tour. Number 2. Lost River Cave. Families can go to Lost River Cave to see the beauty of Kentucky's unique karst geology and teach their children about the natural world. The main draw is a boat tour into a large cave, the state's only one of its sort. The Nature Center has a variety of events and activities for kids and adults who want to learn more about their surroundings. Kids may work on tasks to become junior tour guides while exploring the simple nature paths, or they can gather their findings and exchange them at the Nature Trading Post. Other activities for families include bird bingo, geocaching, and gem sifting. People may also just walk around the grounds to see the natural spring, limestone bluffs, and the ruins of ancient mining facilities. A zipline trip is also offered for those wanting a bit more adrenaline. Number 1. Louisville. Louisville, named after King Louis XVI, was built on the Falls of Ohio in 1778, making it one of the oldest settlements west of the Appalachians. It is Kentucky's biggest city. Louisville is well recognized as the site of the Kentucky Derby, a leg of the Triple Crown dubbed the greatest 2 minutes in sports. The yearly Derby dates back to 1875. Thunder over Louisville, North America's biggest fireworks show, takes place just before the Derby. Take a stroll around the city's historic area, the biggest historic preservation district in the United States, which showcases Victorian mansions and structures. And that's all for today. Which of these places would you like to visit next? And if you have already visited some of the places, how was your experience? Let us know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy similar stuff, check out my other videos. And if you like it, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. And I'll see you in the next video.